feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Monday morning. It's August 4th, and coming up on today's show, it is part 2 of our midsummer mailbag. We split this up into 2 parts because just answering the Anthony Edwards questions in part 1 took us almost an hour. So we just put that all in part 1, and this part is going to be on different things. If you're looking for specific Ant talk, go back and you'll find an hour of that in part 1. This episode, we're going to talk about continuity. We're going to talk about expectations for next season, the young guys, the final roster spot, and then a little bit about how fan experience might change with new ownership in place for the Wolves. But before we get into that, quickly off the top here, I want to hit on the Wolves signing Johnny Juzang to a training camp contract and Enrique Freeman to a 2-way contract, along with the Wolves bringing back Tristan Newton on a 2-way contract. Kyle and I answered mailbag questions about that final roster spot before the news of the Juzang and Freeman and Newton signings happened. So I'm going to update that here quickly. And what I wanted to start by saying is, I think the main thing, you'd see all that, you go, okay, the roster's done. No, they still have that open roster spot, and it needs to be filled with a guaranteed contract before the season begins. Juzang was signed to a non-guaranteed contract called an Exhibit 9 contract. That's a training camp contract. Gives him an opportunity to compete for a roster spot in camp. Enrique Freeman was signed to a 2-way contract. At the time, we thought that was the third and final 2-way roster spot next to Rocco Zikarsky and Jesse Edwards. But Jesse Edwards was subsequently waived. So there's now a third spot available again. Tristan Newton was signed to that now open third and final roster spot. So Juzang, training camp contract. Enrique Freeman, 2-way contract. Jesse Edwards waived. Tristan Newton signed to another 2-way contract. So the way I would think about it is like this. There are still 2 real roster spots open, and at least one of those spots must be filled before the season. That's the rule. Got to have at least 14 players on your roster. They currently have no 2-way spots available. So for now, it's just 2 open roster spots, one of which they have to fill either with the mid-level the taxpayer mid-level exception for up to $5.7 million, or to a minimum contract. Basically, they can still bid on current free agents in the range of like $2.5 million to $5.5 million. That's probably the way to think about it. But I want to talk about what happened. And I want to start with Enrique Freeman, because I think and the signing of Newton as well continue an interesting trend by this Wolves front office. Quickly, a little background on Freeman if you haven't heard of him before. He was the 50th overall pick in the 2024 draft by the Indiana Pacers, and he was on a 2-way contract with them last season. He only played 181 minutes over the season. A lot of that was garbage time, but he did start 1 game for him when their centers were all hurt. Before being drafted, though, Freeman played 5 seasons at the University of Akron. He was 23 years old when he was drafted, almost 24. Freeman is actually 1 day older than Terrence Shannon Jr. Look that up. They were both in the same draft class. We're like, oh, Shannon's so old. Well, Freeman's a little bit older. The only 2024 draft picks who are older than Enrique Freeman and Terrence Shannon Jr. Are Quentin Post and Cam Spencer, which I think brings up that trend from last year that I'm talking about. And that's that the early returns on drafting really old guys in the 2024 draft have been really good, or better than they normally are. The 4 oldest guys drafted last season, again, are Quentin Post, Cam Spencer, Enrique Freeman, and Terrence Shannon Jr. Post played a lot for the Warriors last year, even in the playoffs. You remember a few cameos, even in the conference semifinals against the Wolves. I think Post actually started 1 game. Shannon didn't play a lot for the Wolves during the regular season, but got playoff opportunities as well. Cam Spencer didn't play for the Grizzlies in the playoff series because he was on a 2-way contract, but he did play for them during the regular season, and Memphis just gave him a 4-year extension, which is definitely, I think, a sign that they're more than pleased with their investment in the 23-year-old Cam Spencer with the 53rd overall pick in last season's draft. I mean, that's 3 hits for, late second-round picks. On Post, he was pick 52. Spencer was pick 53. They were drafted right after Freeman, who was pick 50, who is definitely not a hit yet. But I'm just saying this to be like, look, 24-year-olds that late, or 23-year-olds at the time, they've been having some success. But it wasn't just those 3 guys. It wasn't just Post, Spencer, and Shannon who were 23 years old when they were in, when the draft came around last year. I was going through it. There's a lot of guys who were 23 when the draft happened last season, including some guys that went undrafted, but that, played that first season as 23, 24 years old and had, success, relative to, what their, draft stock was. Jamison Battle for Toronto, Isaac Jones for Sacramento, Antonio Reeves for New Orleans, Pelle Larson for Miami. He played a lot. Tristan Da Silva for Orlando started a lot for the Magic. And then there's Baylor Shireman, Dalton Connect, and Tyler Kolek, who were all 23 when they were drafted as well. They didn't really get opportunities as rookies, but I don't know, looking at those depth charts, it kind of looks like all three of those guys might be in the Celtics, Lakers, and Knicks rotation next year. I know those kind of sound like some random names, and they are, but you got to trust me, I guess, that those guys were kind of like their team's version of Jalen Clark. Like, look at this 23-year-old role player we have here. They found that in those guys here. And so my bigger point is that I think drafting older prospects is becoming a better investment than it was 5 or 10 years ago. I mean, the theory I kind of always go to is that COVID happened when those guys were in college and NIL stuff's going on. I don't know, maybe their paths to the pros were distorted. I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think that it makes more sense that, I think it makes more sense that these guys still have the same low ceiling, but maybe have more of a chance of becoming a rotation player. I think the odds of that are proving to be higher. And I don't know, you can agree or disagree with that. You could say I'm, looking at just one season and maybe overreacting. Whether you think it's true or not, it does seem to be a bet that the Wolves are liking to take, not only on Enrique Freeman last week, but lots of times over the last 24 months. Obviously, Terrence Shannon Jr., he was also an older prospect, but so was Jesse Edwards. Jesse Edwards was a rookie for the Wolves last season on a 2-way contract, and he was older than Shannon. So was Tristan Newton. Newton was on a 2-way with the Wolves last season, and he was 23 years old. He was a 23-year-old rookie last season, fresh off of 2 national championships with UConn, old player. And they're bringing him back again now for his 24-year-old season, for his second season in the NBA. They also made this bet 2 years ago on Jalen Clark when they drafted him in the second round in 2023. Clark not only had a torn Achilles when he was drafted, but he was almost 22 years old when they were drafted, which means he wouldn't be 23 years old until he was healthy enough to start playing. I don't know much about Enrique Freeman and his game yet. I wasn't grinding the tape over the weekend, but I understand the type of wager the Wolves are making on Freeman, because it's the same type of move they've made over and over again these last 2 years, investing in older players theoretically more ready to produce from the end of your roster, but sooner. And I know the Oklahoma City Thunder are doing the same thing. Brandon Carlson, current 2-way player for the Thunder, went undrafted in 2024, but signed after the draft in Oklahoma City. He was, again, same draft class as Terrence Shannon Jr., but a year older than Shannon. And the Thunder also had Alex Dukas on a 2-way last year, another 2024 draft class guy who was 23 years old on draft night. So I would think about Enrique Freeman as another bet on an older prospect. This time, a bet on an active kind of but undersized big who apparently had a really intriguing summer league. And the Wolves also bringing back Tristan Newton on another 2-way contract. It is another bet on this archetype of older and probably more ready to contribute player. And I just think that's an interesting trend. All right, let's do Johnny Juzang a little quicker on this one. Juzang has been with the Utah Jazz for the last 3 seasons after playing at UCLA and going undrafted in 2022. Actually, at UCLA, he was teammates with Jalen Clark for 2 seasons. He's currently 24 years old. Juzang, that is, actually 8 months younger than Terrence Shannon Jr. and younger than the rest of those older prospect guys from the 2024 draft class I was just talking about. Juzang also got a lot of opportunity in Utah in the 3 years he played there. He played 1,874 minutes, started 23 games. I mean, I know the Jazz were a tanking team, but that's a lot of opportunity, which I think allows us to believe a little bit more in the statistical signals that came out for him in his 3 years there. He literally played 10 times as many minutes. He's played 10 times as many minutes in the NBA as Enrique Freeman has. And what Juzang's statistical signals suggest is that Juzang is valuable as a floor spacer on offense, but problematic on defense. He shot it really well in Utah. Didn't play much his rookie season there, but his second year in the league, he shot 42% from three in more limited opportunities, and then earned last season more opportunity, a bigger role where he shot 38% from three and in over more minutes. It's 38% on high volume too. He was a launcher. He played 20 minutes. Juzang played 20 minutes per game and averaged 5 threes attempted per game. That's 9 threes per 36 minutes, 12 threes per 100 possessions. I mean, it's like almost Dante DiVincenzo like volume from three for Juzang. But again, defensive metrics are awful. Defensive estimated plus minus puts Juzang as a first percentile defender in the NBA last season. That's not the good way to be in the first percentile, like the worst percentile. The only players who played more minutes last season and had a worse defensive estimated plus minus were Nick Smith in Charlotte and Juzang's teammate in Utah, Keontae George. So I don't know. Maybe a good part of those numbers is just about playing for Utah. But that's the statistical profile. Johnny Juzang is a player who bombs threes at 6'7" and is not really helpful defensively. We'll see if that profile pops in training camp, because there are spots open on this roster. Juzang, I'm sure you'd be able to get for that cheap minimum deal. And I think that skill set does make sense on this roster. Doesn't hurt to have another three-point shooter when you have a generally good defense. Maybe you can protect him a little bit. I will say I'd also bet that this isn't the last like Juzang-like name we see the Wolves sign to an Exhibit 9 training camp deal to. These normally trickle in over the course of August and September. A couple more players added to at least the training camp roster, and maybe even a guaranteed contract player will join the mix as well. So yeah, that was Enrique Freeman, Johnny Juzang, and Tristan Newton talk on August 4th. A hopefully more interesting conversation with Kyle coming up here, but I did want to touch on those three guys being added to the roster over the weekend. Before we bring Kyle in, want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Falling Knife Brewing Company, where people have been gathering to watch this Minnesota Lynx team. The Lynx play on Friday and Sunday this week. Both games will be on the projection screens in the tap room with the sound on. Great spot to watch the Lynx with other Lynx fans. There's also trivia at Falling Knife on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays in the summer. Wednesdays is Trivia Mafia at 7:30. Thursdays is the initial game at 7:30. And Sundays is a different themed trivia every week at 5 p.m. No matter the day of the week, great place to enjoy some good beer and good people, and maybe some trivia and Lynx basketball. That's Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. And these are the averages Prize Picks has picked for Anthony Edwards' season-long numbers next season. 27.4 points per game, 5.6 rebounds per game, 4.6 assists per game, and 3.6 made threes per game. It's interesting to me that those are all lower than Ant's averages from last season, except for the assists. They have it the same, up by 0.1. Points, rebounds, and made threes per game are all projected to go down next season. So if you're seeing Ant's per game stats going up next season, head over to Prize Picks, go over to NBA season and throw some Ant picks in there. They also have season-long numbers up for a lot of the star players. Always something going on over at Prize Picks. As a reminder, to put together a lineup at Prize Picks, all you need to do is put 2 or more picks in your lineup to win. If you don't yet have a Prize Picks account, all you have to do is put in the promo code DANE when you sign up, and you will receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app using promo code DANE when you create your account. All right. Part 2 of the Midsummer Mailbag with Kyle Theige coming up next. All right, part 2 of our Midsummer Mailbag with Kyle Theige. And in this episode, we'll be answering the questions you all sent about some of the roster improvements or lack thereof and expectations that come with those for next season. We'll talk a little bit about the young guys, some player comps there. I thought that was fun. I want to talk about the defense a little bit. We got some questions there. Answer questions a little bit about the fan experience, what could change under new ownership. We've done that a little, but maybe we could talk about that again. And got a bunch of questions on the point guard position as well. Kyle, where should we start?
Let's start with continuity. But again, if you missed it, this is probably dropping Monday, August 4th. Tomorrow is a big birthday for a certain number 5. So we did 55 minutes on Anthony Edwards last week, if you want to go check out that part of the mailbag. But I had 2 questions here that I guess we lumped under continuity or like the staff or whatever. So one was from our friend Andrew Carlson that said Sachin Gupta and Joe Boylan are the only 2 larger departures I can think of from the Wolves staff / front office over the last couple of years. What, in your opinion, has allowed them to keep things intact and avoid the brain drain that typically happens when teams go from bad to successful? I think that one I want to answer first before I get into the next one.
Cool.
And I'm biased, and I think people probably think I'm totally in their pocket. I think it's just a lot of new ownership stuff. I think the ownership group and the front office and the coaching staff at all 3 levels, and even with the roster, really believe continuity is actually like an advantage or like a weapon. And that means probably, paying your people top market value. I mean, one of my favorite people in this organization is Matt Lloyd, and he's had opportunities to go to other places, and maybe those teams haven't chosen him yet. And I think eventually they will. But I do just think big picture, having ownership that wants to keep important people around. I mean, that's kind of like such a 180 from what I'm used to growing up as a Timberwolves fan, of other organizations wanting your talent. Like the Wolves were constantly going out and trying to, can we call someone about their head coach or whatever, like the Knicks did this summer. I think the fact that all these people now are in high demand, whether it be a Micah Nori, a Matt Lloyd, a Tim Conley, that is a good representation of having a strong organization. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, and I mean, we're going to tie this into continuity of the roster. That's
Yep.
sort of a given, right? Of the only player they lost is Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But it's an interesting question, and I actually had to think about it for a while of like, why haven't more Timberwolves people left, Timberwolves staffers or whatever? Went to the conference finals 2 years in a row. It's clearly an organization that's on the up and up. And like Andrew said in the question, Andrew said Sachin Gupta, who was a longtime executive with the Wolves, he left. Joe Boylan was on the staff. He left for Memphis last season. I'd add a couple more. Like they did lose a couple guys this summer. Corliss Williamson was an assistant coach on the Wolves bench. He's in San Antonio, I believe now. And then John Wallace was worked in the Wolves front office, and now he's kind of co-running the show in Denver. So we are starting to see some of that. But like that's not an indictment of the Wolves. I think that's people externally around the league starting to understand that there is something good in place in Minnesota. I think for a long time, I was like, obviously even pre-Rosas and stuff like the 2010s, it wasn't really a consideration. You weren't like, that's the place we're going to take people from. And I think there's still a little bit of hesitation around that. It's kind of like the manifestation of some people not believing the Wolves were really a conference finals team the last 2 years. Like, maybe they were like a semifinals team, but we don't really think that they were top 4. I think part of why more people haven't left or been poached is because there isn't a deep external belief around the league that Minnesota is one of those places like San Antonio or Oklahoma City or whatever, where there's real trees sprouting to pick the fruit from. But that's starting to happen. Though I think, to your point, the Wolves are doing everything they can within reason, basically outside of people getting promotions, to keep them. And I think one example of that is Pablo Prigioni and him not leaving. This summer, it was the Knicks, right, that were pursuing him to be an assistant coach.
Yep.
And he's staying in Minnesota with the Wolves. So I think the Wolves are in a place where they can still have continuity right now and have reaped benefits from that continuity over the past few seasons, and then are looking to kind of make another step forward next season based on the continuity. I just think it's relevant and wise for us to bring up continuity organization wide rather than just continuity of roster, because those things play off of each other.
You mentioned Pablo, and you usually let me isolate one possession of a pod. So I'm going to take this one because the question was, it's from I Am Grit. So I'm not even, if Pablo Prigioni would have left for the Knicks, do you think Mike Bite would have retired and taken his job? And when I saw this question come through, I thought about Joe Ingles. And when I thought about Joe Ingles, I thought about an anecdote or a story from that Friday night where we got to go to that little cigar lounge event in Vegas. And I talked to a member of either the coaching staff or the front office, let's put it that way. And they said, because we were talking about, like, what do you think of the offseason? I was like, oh, you got Julius and Nas back and stuff. And then, like, Joe, I think, and kind of looked at me with this wry smile. He goes, yeah, the Joe Ingles signing was kind of a hot button topic. And then we talked about that and Wolves Twitter. And he goes, quote, you know what's cooler than being an NBA coach? Being a fucking NBA player. And he told me to go read the CBA, which I didn't know, like, the whole 590 pages was online. There's a lot of stuff that players just get that comes with, like, years of service or, like, retirement or all these different benefits. So on this one, I think we lost sight of everything with the Joe Ingles thing when he signed a minimum deal, and you actually reminded people using your cap knowledge of, like, yes, it's 3.1 million, but actually the league pays part of it. He is literally just a minimum player. But I just want to ask you this, like, Mike Conley is scheduled to make $10.7 million next year. Joe Ingles is scheduled to make 3.6. I think Chris Finch makes like 3 or something as the head coach of the team. So I don't know, man. Would either of those guys love to take a massive pay cut while having to work more and lose the ability to play basketball? I just think this idea of why don't we have all the old guys just become coaches? I'm sorry. It's like fucking stupid. It's like, would you rather be a player like the coaches do? And as this person reminded me, like, they have like meetings and they do a bunch of prep work. Like when Micah Nori leaves a game on a Tuesday, he doesn't go home and just like smoke a cigar. He like goes and breaks down film, and he's like, you got to break down the guards for the next game. I think we need to stop forcing players to retire. I just think that Joe Ingles thing drove me crazy. We never talked about it. He's literally the same minimum contract as anyone. Bones Highland. Like, they're both going to hit the books the same. The NBA just pays for a little more. And as we go into this pod with the younger players, I don't want to go sign these other guys. Like, I want Rob to play. I want Terrence to play. So I don't need my 15th man to like be good. I want him to be Joe Ingles and make me laugh and inbound the ball with 5 seconds left, and that's it. But I'm telling you right now, if you're wondering why these players don't just want to become coaches, because it is way cooler to be a basketball player and get like a pension and more years of service and get per diem. Do you know that players that get traded get moving expenses covered by the team? I don't know if coaches get that. Like, that's in the CBA. When Dante DiVincenzo was traded from the Knicks to the Wolves, one of those teams had to pay his moving expenses. That's probably why Mike Conley isn't going to take a $400,000 bench roll, because he would rather make $10.7 million to throw the ball to Anthony Edwards.
No, absolutely. Is there even an example of that happening? Like a player retiring and immediately going onto the staff?
Maybe like Jared Dudley, but I think he was actually doing maybe some like media stuff for a while.
Yeah, I don't even know if it was immediate. Like, and send us this message or put in the comments or whatever if you could think of this, we're just missing it. I wonder if that's ever happened where a player was on the team and then the very next season, like, nope, now you're on the bench as a coach. I just, to your broader point, these are questions we get a lot. It's just, I'm pretty sure it's never happened. And Kyle lays out
it's like the fantasy football thing of like, hey, Dan, I know you have Saquon Barkley. We're in fantasy football mode right now. Yeah. Would you take these 3 quarters for him? And you're like, why would I do that? Why wouldn't I just keep Saquon Barkley? Like, if I'm Mike Conley, and by the way, I think Mike is very tuned in. Mike hears a lot of this stuff. And I'm sure he's thinking, like, I already kind of took a pay cut. Like, I'm still pretty good at basketball. But as soon as you stop playing NBA basketball, you lose a lot of cool, contractually, collectively bargained stuff. And once you're done, like, you don't get to go back and like play again. So yeah, that quote was my favorite little thing from Vegas of, I think I'd rather play in the NBA than coach in the NBA. Right. And that was my rant. What next? Do you want to talk about the roster?
Yeah, I'll do the next question. That was good. So this question comes from Haas. Wolves had a decent win total increase the season following the Gobert trade. Assuming we don't have another massive trade right before the season starts, is it reasonable to expect another jump given continuity and all? Do you remember what the jump was from Gobert season 1 to Gobert season 2? What the win total jump was?
Was it 12?
It was 14. Yeah, it was 42 and 40 the first Gobert year to 56 and 26 the second year. They were 23rd on offense the first season. They jumped up 7 spots to 16th on offense the second season. The first season, they were 8th in defense. The second season of Gobert, they jumped up 7 spots to 1st on defense. They went from 16th in net rating to 3rd in net rating in the league. Huge jump. It's a huge jump right there. And looking at those numbers like that, I don't expect anywhere near that size of a leap. But what if due to continuity, because I think we know a lot of that leap was about continuity and the cement sort of drying and better health that season for sure too. That gets a lot of the 14 more wins. I'm trying to figure out like what a reasonable amount of juice to apply for continuity is. And even if it's like a fourth of what that was, with 14, like 3-4 wins, like that'd be a pretty big jump. Moving up a couple spots in offense, due to continuity, that makes them a top 10 bordering, maybe like top 6, top 5 offense. That would be huge. And if you could get the defense based on continuity to take a step forward, they were 6th last year on defense. Can we get back to being a top 3 defense? That's a serious needle move right there. And frankly, like the type of needle move that typically doesn't happen unless you bring in another really, really good player. Now, I'm not saying that's totally bankable. We just do have some precedent of continuity in this system and the value of that, 12 months after a big trade has happened. We're coming up on 12 months following the Randall and Cat trade. And I think it is reasonable to expect some growth based on continuity. There's a lot of other noise and injuries and all that sort of stuff, but that is part of internal development next season, in my opinion, that I don't think we normally prescribe to internal development, because we just go, oh, internal development, Rob Dillingham's getting older, all the young guys, they're going to get a little bit better. Yeah, that might come too, but I think continuity, specifically as it benefits Julius Randle, is something to expect next season. And I don't expect a 14 win jump because of it, but I expect the beginning of the season to be a lot smoother due to continuity. And that was a good question. I hadn't really totally considered it like that.
The greatest season in franchise history, in my opinion, came after one of the most boring off seasons, and that was the continuity year that you just kind of talked about. It's not super fair to do this because I think some teams in the West did get better. I think more teams in the West didn't get better than did. We always just say the West is loaded. But if you just took last year's standings, which again, I know this is unfair, and then the Wolves just had a continuity bump of 4 more wins, now they're the 2 seed and they've cleared the Rockets by a full game. Again, the Rockets got better, the Nuggets got better, but I really
how many games last season did the Wolves lose because it was clear that they were not on the same page? I mean, obviously the Toronto game is the beaming example of that, the Randall chucking it at Rudy's feet situation. I mean, seriously, like, those things happen due to the not having a cohesive group. Like, I don't think it's crazy to say that last season they win 3 or 4 more games if it's just more normal at the beginning of last season, right? And then if all other things hold, you're the 2 seed. Sorry.
Well, again, I think I lose my mind when people throw both arguments at me. So last year it was very evident. I don't think Dante DiVincenzo ever felt comfortable here because he was traded and his moving expenses were paid 48 hours before training camp. And Julius Randle has been on the record saying, I didn't really start to fit in until I got hurt and watched them play. That was in February. So I do struggle with talking out of one side of your mouth. Like, I wish they would have turned over half this roster, when last year we literally found out that guys that didn't have the continuity, didn't know how to howl like a Minnesota Wolf. Like, it took them a while to figure it out. And that's why they struggled until basically the All-Star break. And then they kind of went on a heater. So I expect even, I don't know how much Dante DiVincenzo we're going to talk about today, but the latest Wolves news is that injury he's had or re-sustained, wherever, he's not going to play for Italy, which is a bummer because I was like, backcourt of the future, him and Spagnuolo playing for Italy. But I think him just having more time here, he knows he's going to be here. Julius having an off season where he's not focused on contracts or anything. He's just hanging out in Dallas, like getting ready for another season to play with the Wolves. So I think continuity, and again, this continuity, whether it be the front office, the coaching staff, the roster, ticket sales, whatever, like that, this ownership group, that is one of their big terms and beliefs, is they believe in finding good people and then keeping those good people. And whether that be the coach, the GM, or, the point guard, I think that's something that they're going to kind of continue to lean into. So,
let's grab a break here, and then we'll come back and talk about roster improvements and expectations. Today's show is brought to you by Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty. And if it is time to buy or sell your home, please do reach out to Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty to help you with the process. All you need to do is go to thedancingrealtor.com, Adriana's website, or call or text her at 715-304-9920 to book a free strategy session. You go to the website, you call or text her, you're going to set up one of these free strategy sessions that's going to get the ball rolling, something you need in the buying or selling process there. And if you do set up one of those free consultations, one of those free strategy sessions, you will be entered to win some Wolves tickets to a game from us next season. I know there's a handful of you out there who are thinking about purchasing a home. You might be procrastinating it. And the reality of the situation is you need a realtor to help you get the ball rolling. If this is you, go to thedancingrealtor.com for more information, or feel free to call or text her at Adriana Lonick at 715-304-9920 to book that strategy session. Like I said, mention this podcast and get entered to win a pair of free Timberwolves tickets when you book that consultation. All right, Kyle, moving on from continuity is like a cousin of that, which we were kind of getting into, is like, well, how did your roster change? Did it improve? And based on those changes and improvements or lack thereof, what are the expectations for next season? Simple question from Dan Moriarty that I'll let you start with first is, what have the Wolves done for next season to improve their chances for a title?
Not put more things in the way of letting Terrence Shannon Jr. play basketball and some of the young guys. I don't know if this is the right spot for it, but it just came to my mind. I was thinking back of I've been doing this now for 8 or 9 years. Like, every season kind of has a theme. Like, we'll always remember the weirdest team ever theme, and then seeing those shirts in North Loop during the playoff run. But then, like, this last year to me was 8 starters. And I'm going to answer that question directly, but like that was the theme that goes on the DVD, like 8 starters. Is, for whatever reason, the young guys, and we fought about this in my office, like, they just didn't get a chance to play. And the young guys, for me, are Rob Dillingham, Jalen Clark, and Terrence Shannon Jr. Baby B is off in his own corner, just getting ready to be an all-star center. I don't think, in hindsight, and I wonder what you think, I don't think those 3 guys had to play last year. It might have helped. It might have been better. And we're going to talk about each of them here in a little bit, but I don't think they had to play. Would it have helped them to play? Sure. Would their record have been maybe better? I don't know. I think it's a double-edged sword. I think this year, those 3 guys, for different reasons, have to play. And I think in that sense, just giving those guys more opportunities is going to increase. I mean, again, I know it's not sexy because you usually want to go out and win the press conference and have all these signings, but I do think this franchise has shown, like, if we just marinate some of our players a little more, that gives us the greatest chance to win and lean into continuity. And I think not going out and making all these different moves, more 2-for-1 trades, right? Like they did with Carl, that kind of all of a sudden hurt Rob's chances to get in the mix. I think just having a pretty unsexy offseason, keeping the guys, and then looking at the young trio and being like, your time is now. I think that is what's going to give them the best chance to try to level up, because you do need more and more injections of youth and athleticism and speed and shooting and playmaking. And sometimes the best way to do it is with the guys you have in-house.
To answer the question very literally, what have the Wolves done for next season to improve their chances for a title? We'll just talk about what they've done. They added a intriguing rookie big man, and they retained Naz Reid and Julius Randle. None of those things were given. Yeah, you knew you had the 17 pick. Yeah, you knew you had the free agencies of Naz Reid and Julius Randle, but none of those were certain things. Those are things that they have done to the roster. And I would note with Naz and Julius, we kind of, I think, like the combined cost of those two contracts. That's what they did, while also losing Nickeil Alexander-Walker as kind of a victim of the second apron there. I think the better question, what Dan is getting at in his question, is what could have they done? And that question is about the KD trade, right? They could have gone and made the KD trade, or been more aggressive for the KD trade, or made another trade like that where you are investing in an older player that has some question marks and some ceiling to his game. They could have pursued a KD trade, and I think to some extent they did, and ultimately determined the price wasn't a good idea, or Kevin didn't want to come, and those sort of things. I don't think they were like sitting on their hands like, nope, we're not going to make any trades no matter what. We're just rolling with this. I think they explored some there, and there wasn't a ton of KD adjacent type of moves to have been made. So they could have done that. They didn't, but I don't think they did nothing there. They could have prioritized Nickeil Alexander-Walker over someone else on the roster. That's probably like the biggest what if, or like the closest what if, is, yeah, Nickeil was a free agent, and I understand you had to stay below the second apron. And if you would have brought Nickeil back at $16 million a year, you're over the second apron and you don't want to do that. I get that. But you could have brought him back and moved something else out elsewhere. The mechanics of that, would have been somewhat tricky, but that's a what they could have done. It's a potential reasonable path to have taken there. And then the other thing they could have done is not re-sign Naz Reid or not re-sign Julius Randle. I don't really know if that would have improved their championship odds. Maybe you can make an argument that you could have signed and traded one of them somewhere else to get something else better, maybe a different position player in some sort of like sign and trade swap. I'm not sure how many of those were lying around in this 2025 offseason as options. So yeah, you look at it at the end and you go, okay, they got Berenger, they re-signed Naz, they re-signed Julius. That's the offseason. And they'll fill this final roster spot. That doesn't seem like they did a lot to improve their chances for a title. But I always think it's important to look at like what it was, what the roster was, and other paths that could have been taken, and other paths that could have gone wrong. I don't think we're looking at this offseason at all and being like, huge mistake here. They didn't do the KD trade. Huge mistake. They prioritized keeping other guys rather than Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Huge mistake. They retained Naz Reid and Julius Randle. I don't feel like that many people are really feeling that way. So I don't know what the alternatives were. There's not one that I see that I'm like, I would have loved that. I could paint some like hypothetical ones of like, oh, Julius Randle turning into this guy. That would have been great. Is that realistic? Probably not. Trading Dante DiVincenzo for some massive haul of picks in return and keeping Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Would have that been cool? Maybe beneficial? Sure. But was that actually out there on the table? I don't know. So I don't think they made moves to grossly improve their championship odds, but I don't really know what else they were supposed to do.
And we should emphasize that this question was about next season.
Yeah.
And I do think this kind of ties into it. It took me a while. I'll be hand up, full transparency. I had to listen to your last pod with Jace at like 0.5 just to understand the metrics of how you're doing the equity championship thing. Once I bit into it, I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. And I do think a KD type trade, I'm feverishly don't believe some of the reporting that was like what they would have had to pay like to get him. I think it would have been less than that. But had they have gotten him, you would have given up some real assets and you would have increased your championship likelihood this season, next season. more, but I also think you would have decreased possibly your championship odds moving forward over that 4 or 5 year window that you and Jace talked about. So another thing too with continuity, and I think this organization has done a really good job, and it's why I always harp on this. You and I are poker players, this idea of being all in. The Wolves have never been all in, because if you're all in and you lose, you're done. You have to leave the table. So they didn't go all in for Rudy Gobert, because since then they were able to add, Berenger and Shannon and Dillingham and Clark. So I think the best chance they have is to start to let those guys get more opportunities and see what happens. And I guess just to kind of tie it into this other question in terms of expectations for next season from Spike, practically and without social media hyperbole, what's the team's floor for us to still be considered doing well? We all want to rise and move beyond the Western Conference Finals, but if that's all, quote unquote, we manage again, how does that play out? This is actually maybe my favorite question, because it does, like, I think a couple weeks ago, I told you if they don't win a title in the Ant era, I believe it'll be like a failure. And that just happens sometimes. Like, it's really hard, right? Like, you think of all the top 75 NBA players that never could win a title because Jordan kept winning them, right? Or Kobe kept winning them, or LeBron kept winning them. So big picture, if this thing never results in a parade down Hennepin, I think it is a failure. If they were to just make the Western Conference Finals again next year, and I said that's all I can tell you, they're going to be in the Final Four again. Do you think that's like six? Because I think that's success.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think so. I view it so much more through the lens of like, what did it feel like while it was going
fair.
on? You know what I mean? And is there a world where the Wolves lose in the second round in Game 7 to
the Nuggets,
next season in the semifinals? And I'm like, still pretty intrigued by what that season was. Yeah, it wouldn't just be all about the playoff result. My intrigue and my growth in my belief of the Wolves eventually winning the championship in the Anthony Edwards era, if that's still going up, then it's a success to me, and the result, the end result of the season, I don't think is a good way of defining exactly what a team was. I know I say it all the time too. I'm like, Western Conference Finals last 2 years in a row. I don't know. Is that a great metric either of what this team was the past 2 seasons? Because they weren't very close in the Western Conference Finals either time, So what does that even mean? If they go to the Western Conference Finals next year and they lose in 7 games and it's a hell of a series, that's a way, way different outcome than what I've just watched the last 2 seasons there. So I'm really like thinking about what it felt like, what was sustainable, what is growing that maybe has more growth to come from it. I don't care if that team loses in the second round or maybe even the first round, if it feels like it's building in that right direction and Rudy still seems impactful and Julius still seems just as impactful and Terrence Shannon Jr. and Rob Dillingham and some of these guys are coming. If it really feels that way objectively, then I'm not going to be like overly obsessive about the result and calling the season a failure. Frankly, I think there's ways that they could go to the conference finals again and it would be a failure. It's so much to me about the context of what the season felt like. And the biggest thing, last thing in my notes there, is at the end of next season, wherever it is everyone still happy? That's the big thing I'm circling there, because this is a contender-ish team now, but it's also a team that I think is playing the long play from a continuity standpoint. We've talked about the continuity of the past few seasons that they've had and the benefits they've had from it. They also basically have all the under 30-year-old pieces on their roster under contract through the entirety of the 2020s. Like this team isn't all in, to your point. There's more time here. So I'm looking at the success or failure of the season, with nuance.
The contract thing is a fun one to just bring up, because I remember, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, misremembering this, but when they had that, I said the best year ever, and they had a boring offseason, wasn't that just the offseason where they just kind of gave everyone money? Like Ant, you're signed, Nas, you're signed, Jaden, you're signed, and then everyone stopped. This was actually brought up in the locker room maybe last year, 2 years ago, where like, no one's worried about financial stuff anymore, so now we just play basketball. And that's the same case now for this year, right? Like Rudy's on a 3-year extension. Julius, Nas, everyone's been paid. So maybe they just kind of focus on basketball. And to your larger point, you and I talked to like 6 different people that thought the Nuggets just had a better season than the Wolves this past year because the Nuggets took the Thunder to 7, even though they didn't make the Western Conference Finals and the Wolves kind of got punked by them. So yeah, I think there's nuance to there. I think the only pushback I have, and I don't even think you really meant it like this, but I think a first round flame out, no matter who it is, even if that opponent becomes the eventual NBA champion, I think that we got to be honest with ourselves. I think that is disappointment, and I think that's failure. I think this team now. What
if Rudy Gobert is hurt or Julius Randle is hurt?
Well, yeah, that's the context. You know what I'm saying? That matters. I'm saying if they're
but you're right. You're right. Generally speaking, first round would be very disappointing. I'm just saying there's a world in which it is a first round thing, and I'm still well, all these things still happened over. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving them too much rope there, and maybe that's a bridge too far. I'm not really viewing the Wolves as contenders next season, as we said on the pod last time. And with Jace, I do view them as title contenders in the 2020s, and I think this season is about learning how to get there. You know, not even just taking steps, learning how to get there. And if that's happening, I don't know. By my metric, that'll be fine.
I want to talk about the young guys now, and we'll pick anyone you want. I just want to put on the record, I'm way more bullish and have higher expectations for them, kind of because of what happened in the East. And like, if you just make the finals, like your opponent's probably not gonna be that good. I do think a couple teams in the West got better, and maybe we'll talk about that as we lean up to training camp. But I think the West has become almost overrated in terms of, I don't know, like the Lakers added DeAndre Ayton, and I watched DeAndre Ayton play basketball out here in Portland, and it's like, yeah, okay, they figured it out. Like, have fun. Okay, like, I know Luka's skinny now, but have fun eating chicken strips at 4 a.m. when you land in OKC in the middle of winter. Which young guy? We have a bunch of different questions. Is there a young guy question you really like, or do you just want to start talking about them in general?
Let's do Dilly.
This is from Steve Johnson. Can you compare Rob's game to someone from a winning team in the past? I'm going to let you start because I've thought about this a lot and I can't think of one off the top of my head.
What did you use as like your metric for winning team? Like I didn't do like champion. Did you do like really good team?
When I think of a winning team, I think of being a top 8 team in the league. Like again, I say the final 4 for the conference finals, like making the final 8.
I don't think this totally meets that threshold, but I think style of play, size of player, it does. And I put down Dennis Schroeder, and you know, he's on those Hawks teams. You know, him and Jeff Teague. You know, some of those Hawks teams in the late 2010s, teams that were, you know, playoff teams that were winning high 40s games. Those were winning teams. Then he goes to that Thunder team, and it's Chris Paul, Dennis Schroeder, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That was I think they won like 47, 48 games, something like that. Another sort of winning team that he was a key part of there. And then even the year after that, he went to the Lakers, and that was a winning Lakers team he started on after, I think that was the year after they won the championship. But I think Dennis Schroeder, now he's become such a journeyman, and he's a little annoying as a player and stuff like that. So I maybe people don't love that. I just think that's an interesting sort of like first step of the progression for Rob, is to kind of be that point guard who was sort of splitting the point guard role with the vet in Jeff Teague, splitting point guard, combo guard roles with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chris Paul. I think that comp makes a lot of sense. I also did my little thing where I looked up their combine heights and weights, and Rob Dillingham, 6'1", without shoes, 6'3" wingspan, 164 pounds. There is very few players in the combine database who weighed in under 170 pounds. And Dennis Schroeder is one of those, 6'1" without shoes, 6'8" wingspan, 165 pounds. So it's that small type of player who found a way into being a point guard / combo guard and his team had success. I think Dennis Schroeder is a good example of that. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Your Home Improvement Company, longtime sponsor of the podcast. And I know there's a chunk of you out there who set the plan to be this summer, we're getting this taken care of at the house. It's now August and you're waiting. You're like, are we going to be able to get this done? Get the project done by contacting Your Home Improvement Company. Right now they have that buy 2 windows, get 2 windows free deal going on, 30% off deal on bathroom remodels this season as well. But it's any home improvement project. I tell you about those windows and bathroom deals because that's what they're giving us deals on. But it is any project there. They are reasonably priced. And everything, all the work they are doing is done by certified local professionals and backed by a lifetime warranty. Whatever your project is, Your Home Improvement Company offers great financing deals that requires 0 money down, 0 interest, and 0 payments until 2026. Contact Your Home Improvement Company by calling 866-777-YHIC or by going to yourhomeimprovementco.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better.
One that came to mind as you were speaking, and again, you're just going to have to let me do this for the next 2 months because we are very much in fantasy football season. But the Arizona Cardinals a couple of years ago, like actually a decade ago, had like Chris Johnson, CJ2K from the Titans on the team, and he was like the incumbent starting running back. But they had David Johnson, this kind of young, fast guy who they put at kick returns. I think his first touch as kick return his second year was like he ran it back to the house, right? And you just gave them juice at these little like third down, whatever. I think, and I want to spin this back to what I said earlier about Rob, and Rob is specifically Zach Lowe did his most intriguing players next year. I was actually shocked on that pod they didn't bring up Rob Dillingham because I think taking off my Wolves tinted glasses, I don't think there are 10 players in the entire league that are more fascinating and more intriguing next year than Rob Dillingham. Because if he doesn't play or he doesn't get way more rope, and people are going to hate this, and I hate this, he then becomes a bust. Like, you don't have a lot of precedent. I mean, going back to the player comp thing, I'm struggling with that. You don't have a lot of precedent for a guy that's drafted in the lottery or in the top 10 not really playing in the first 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, you're far more Jalen Smith than you are, like, I don't know, Tyrese Halliburton. So
I got some point guard names.
Hit me.
Who were small like that and didn't work. Trey Burke, Tyrell Terry, Bones Highland, Tyler Ennis, Davion Mitchell, all sort of different types of players, but I think did kind of fall victim to the size piece of it, and their games that were very effective at the college level and looked explosive got a little bit diminished. Definitely got diminished in the pros once they were going against more size. Like, I'm not saying that's going to happen to Rob Dillingham. I don't believe it will. I think there's things there, but that's the other side of it. There's a big risk associated with taking small players of this build. We know that. There's just less players this size in the NBA now. There's less that work. There's less total. But there absolutely are some that very much do work. Terry Rozier was really good at the beginning of his career, right? Really small guard, same height as Rob, 190 pounds. De'Aaron Fox, like, it's not that these things don't work universally, but there's risk associated.
But I think maybe it sounds like we're negative. I'm actually more bullish on Rob than I think I've ever been. Like, I really did. I know I had the quote about it would have been great if in year 2 of Summer League, he did that in year 1. It just didn't happen. But I'm not, like, I'm very much as pro Chris Finch as I am, and I kind of ride for him. One of my expectations is, like, you're just going to have to find ways to get Rob more involved. And I think Mike Conley has a bounce back year. I think he's healthy. I know he's gotten older, but like, we forget that wrist injury a year ago, then like he didn't pick up a basketball until training camp. But I also think this season there needs to be a limit on how many games Mike plays. Last year I was saying 60. I'm like holding the pitchfork for that now. Like, I don't think Mike should play more than 60 games, which means you have 22 games at least where you don't have a starting point guard. And not to spiral, but like, I don't think Dante DiVincenzo, I want him to be off the ball more because I think that's more of a strength. And Rob, again, it's kind of scary, but if all of a sudden you wake up and it's May, June 2026 and the kid still hasn't played much, you are like, he's probably not worth what he was drafted at, right? Like he's probably an asset now that's like 85% of what he was worth on draft night a year ago. If he has the same kind of career arc for one more season, he's at like 40% and he has to play. And I don't know if it's going to always be good. It could look lean sometimes, but of all those guys you listed, I guess Davion Mitchell did kind of pop many years or a couple of years down the road. Most of those guys, you kind of knew the first couple of years, right? Like, this isn't an Akil thing who has the length and the size and just needed a new place. Like I really expect Rob to play and play well, but he has to be given opportunities, which selfishly, I'm just going to spin this into another question about opportunities. Johan Berenger, we got to get Britt to pronounce that right because he was butchering it. But
Berenger,
what kind of usage do you think Berenger will get this season? Is it better for a rookie to be, no pun intended, thrown to the wolves or to ride pine like TSJ and Rob did? That is from Winter Moon. What do you think about that, Berenger and his, I guess, potential to play or not play this coming season?
Yeah, I think for me, that's still the Garza role, which is, 80% garbage time minutes, right? At the end of the game, get in there, run around with Leonard Miller. He's 18 years old,
It's so fun. Just like, hey, go in there and run around with Leonard Miller, like at the Mall of America.
Nix is pointing at you. Yeah. I think it's that. And I think, and frankly, prior to Summer League, and I don't know, maybe if I should even be making that big of changes in my mind based on Summer League, but I wouldn't have had Berenger there. I would have kind of had him like the deep ice, we'll get back to you in a year or two sort of situation. He does look like the type of player from Summer League that, and kind of given his rather basic style of play, I go, okay, like in a pinch, it's a game where Rudy's in foul trouble and Naz Reid isn't playing in that game or something like that. Could I see going to Berenger in real minutes there rather than going small with like Jaden? Potentially. Injuries, excessive foul trouble. Yeah, I think that's what the Berenger opportunity, if anything, looks like. Do you see, is there like, if I'm putting a ceiling on that, do you think that's too restrictive?
I mean, my take is I don't think he should play. So I don't know if that, I might have just built on what you said.
We're kind of saying the same thing.
Well, I mean, but people are going to hate that because of the flashes he had in Summer League. And again, like, I think we're all smart enough to know that those are just flashes and he's getting a bunch of blocks against, completely unscouted things and just using pure athleticism. And you talk to a bunch of people with the team. I mean, that's why I don't throw him into the young trio, even though I'm so high on Terrence Shannon Jr. and I've bought Rob Dillingham stock. I think all those guys could be really, really, really good. I do think Berenger could be like a superstar. Like I think he could be the Derek Lively to Ant's Luka when Ant is at the peak of his powers. And a lot of that's Ant making Berenger look better. And yes, to your hypothetical, Rudy's out with back spasms and Naz is, I don't know, rolled an ankle and Julius DeAndre Ayton style can't back out of his driveway because it's February and there's ice on it. Then sure, I guess give him some minutes. But I just think talking to people with the team, they're so high on him. And you're already kind of seeing people do like draft reviews and be like, that might have been the steal. Anonymous GMs are saying like, that might have been the steal of the draft. I just don't think he knows how to play basketball. And that's totally fine because he was kicking it like 4 years ago. I just think 1 year of marinating, a la Jordan Love, like I think he needs just 1 year of learning more, being around the team, maybe dominating in Des Moines for a couple weeks. But the answer of this to me ties back into Jaden of like, because people keep telling me they need another big. I think Jaden should play a ton at the 4. And if your 4-5s are Rudy, Julius, Naz, and Jaden, and you're playing more spacing, or hopefully Jaden can continue to hit threes in space, that opens up things for Ant. And I think the long-term view of this is just having more athleticism and playing smaller, even though you have the 7'2" kid from France. So yeah, I don't want him to play. I just want him to learn. And if he does get minutes, I'm sure it'll be peaks and valleys, but I think, right, we're saying the same thing of I'm so high on him, but to me, he's not going to mix into my dumb analogy of this car is going 75 on the interstate, and he is like a hitchhiker right now. He doesn't even know what's going on, and that's totally fine because he's 18, and he's the future at center. Like, he is the Rudy Gobert replacement, but just let him marinate for a little bit. You don't need to throw him into uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, we don't need to make him the quote unquote fourth big.
No,
All
that's
of the
Jaden.
power forward and center minutes, when healthy, will be taken up by Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, and Julius Randle. If somebody gets hurt, somebody gets in foul trouble, you play a little bit smaller with Jaden there. It's like the next break glass in case of emergency, I think, is Baron J. And I think that would be a testament to him to be, by the beginning of the season, he'll be 19 years old. If he gets even, 200 non-garbage time minutes this year, that and looks decent in them sometimes, yeah. Like I don't have a huge problem with that. I mean, you'd maybe like to, I think if you signed a minimum center and they were on the roster, they would probably give you more bankable production than Baron J, just like a big body guy out there. Whereas Baron J will maybe be a little bit up and down just based on his age. But given that this is the roster, I don't have a problem with Baron J being the fifth big, is I think what I would call it, given Jaden the fourth there. Let's do Terrence Shannon Jr. This is from Kermit Wiltz. Who is a comp for Terrence Shannon Jr. currently in the league or previously played? Do you have one?
I hate player comps because mine are usually more like personality wise.
You could do another football player from 10 years ago.
I'm so deep, and I just made a trade while we're doing the pod. I don't have one. So why don't you answer it? But then let me tell you just my Terrence note that I had.
Like I said, I like for this type of stuff, I like to choose players for player comps that are like the same size.
Yeah.
I think that's important to like practically apply their skill sets. I'm going to do a combination of two guys, Christian Brown and Miles Bridges. They're both kind of that like 6'6", 6'9" wingspan. So you're not super tall or super long, but you're a wing. Your real force comes from being strong and sturdy as either a defender, which is more, Brown is more the, serving more value to the team he's currently on by being a strong, sturdy point of attack defender. Whereas Bridges, also left-handed, that always helps, is kind of using that size and force offensively. I was going through and looking at a lot of these guys who are that size. They're a little bit bigger and sturdier. It's like Dylan Brooks, like Corey Kispert, those type of guys. And almost none of them are real transition threats. Like you wouldn't be like, that's a big part of their game. And so it's just an interesting part of the Terrence Shannon Jr. package, I think, is you're this more sturdy offensive force going downhill, plus sturdy defensively guarding, but also has some transition ability. The one guy that I was like, okay, to tap into some of the transition stuff, and I realize this is getting to become a very optimistic cocktail, is Stephen Castle from the Spurs.
Okay.
So like a little bit of Miles Bridges, a little bit of Christian Brown, and a little bit of Castle. Those guys are all his size. And I think that's the optimistic vision for TJ, right? Is can guard the ball a la Christian Brown, can be a little bit of an offensive weapon in the half court like Miles Bridges, and then can maybe fly a little bit, like Castle can.
I like those better than the draft day stuff. I think it was Kelly Oubre. Again, maybe just because they're both left-handed. I don't really see a lot of Kelly Oubre's game. Like I said, he's not a big transition guy. He's also just not.
He also has like a 7'3" wingspan. Like that is a physical limitation, quote unquote, of Shannon. Is his wingspan's 6'8.5". So not like he's not gigantic in terms of length or height.
So to bring all these ingredients back, since you said a cocktail, we didn't have any Jalen Clark questions, but this ties into my trio and then Baron J. Whereas I don't think Baron J needs to play. I think Rob Dillingham has to play. And then I also think, and this is why the 8 starters mantra is a shirt that will no longer be printed, is like by the time we do a late July podcast next year, Terrence will be 26. And the age thing gets thrown around a lot. And I know some people criticize, like, yeah, he's dominating at Summer League because he's old enough to rent a car in Hawaii, and most of those other people aren't. But I don't know. I just don't care about that stuff. But he also needs to play because you drafted him as kind of like a NBA ready guy, and he's shown you that he's ready to play in the NBA. And that clock is a little faster than the Berenger clock. Like he's 7 years older than Baby B. Like he needs to play. And then for Jalen Clark, the only thing I had in my brain is that he's the last year of his contract, right? Like I know next summer he would be a restricted free agent. And as we're learning in the NBA right now, like their restricted free agency just sucks. Like if you're an RFA, you're probably just going to stick around. So I would imagine Jalen Clark is here long term. But like you kind of got to know what you of all the guys that could replace specifically what Nickeil did, Jalen Clark is at the top of the list. And that is, you know, in terms of continuity, they did lose a really good player in Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I just think, again, Jalen Clark needs to find a way to get some minutes. Obviously needs to become a 3-and-D guy, not just a D guy. But that ties all into all the other questions we did of like, how does this team get better? I think you really, and this goes to Chris Finch, like Chris Finch needs to be able, I don't know, to put some of his fear of letting the young kids run wild. He needs to trust those guys and see what he's got, especially early in the season. No more gap year stuff, but like you can't just lean harder into new 7 starters. Like you got to trust.
And theoretically, they're more ready now, right? It's another year,
for sure,
right? Yep. And so Finch is making a different decision about playing or not playing Rob Dillingham than he was a season ago.
Yeah,
Rob is those measurements I was going through before too. Like Rob doesn't weigh 164 pounds anymore. Like he's grown literally over the course of the year. There's also the roster is different. There's Nickeil played 25.3 minutes per game last season. So there's the Terrence Shannon Jr. proposition and the Jalen Clark proposition are different. And yeah, that's on Finch to handle accordingly or effectively. And I think he handled it effectively, if stringently, last season. But the point is he needs to have a more open mind to it this season. And I think he has more reason to have an open mind.
Too long, didn't read. 2 hours of podcasting so far. The 8 starters lost a starter. They have 3 young guys in Clark, TJ, and Rob that should play. And then they also have Berenger, who is the most intriguing young prospect on the team, not Nate Mant. But to me, that ties into the 3 questions about final roster spot and point guard position. So I'm just going to rattle these off quick from Stefan, Mitchell, Bergie. I really think signing a Malcolm Brogdon type player would be great for the Wolves. Insurance on Mike and Rob. What are your thoughts? Ultimate Twins fan said, do you think the Wolves end up bringing back another point guard / shooting guard behind Mike and Rob? Or do they hold the remaining MLE money they have for the deadline? I was always a Bones Highland fan. And then Luke R, to close it out, do you see Rob starting at any point this season, or do you think Mike will continue to start even in a more limited role? I'll just take, I mean, this kind of comes back to like, yes, it would have been awesome and a hit of dopamine had July 4th, I get a text or a tweet that's like, the Wolves signed this person. And Malcolm Brogdon probably still has some tread on the tires, right? Probably wants to play for a contender, which I think the Wolves are, but probably wants to play. And I don't know, going back to everything we just talked about, like, where do you find him minutes? So it'd be cool if they went out and signed, like, even when people were like, go get Tyus. I think Mike Conley's better than Malcolm Brogdon. I don't know what you think, but like, they have that piece. I need Rob to get more minutes because I don't want him to be a bust next summer. So I'm just going back to the Joe Ingles rant of like, either don't use the spot and save some money and be flexible, see what happens in February, or just lean into what you got. Because if you go sign someone else who expects to play, they're going to take minutes from the guys you want to play. And if they don't play, it goes back to your next summer. Is everyone happy? And the one thing that this organization has done a really good job of is having a happy locker room for the most part. So I'm out on Malcolm Brogdon, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So let's go through that. Like, Malcolm Brogdon would be better than Bones Highland, just as a player on the team next season. We would imagine that Malcolm Brogdon is a better point guard right now than Bones Highland. But I agree, if you bring in Malcolm Brogdon, or Malcolm Brogdon and his agent are, talking to you about what that role is going to look like, and they're going to bring up, okay, you have, yes, point guard, starting point guard position weak, but what's your plan with Dillingham here? If Malcolm's coming here, we want some of that real estate. I think that could lead to a conflict of interest one way or the other. Brogdon's disappointed he's not playing, and they said he was, or Rob's minutes are limited because, Brogdon's not out there. I think with the Bones Highland archetype, which I like for they do need to sign one more player. They got to get to 14. So you need to bring in somebody. I think a point guard makes sense. What I like kind of about like the Bones Highland idea is it's a guy who would definitely be behind Rob, but maybe shows a little bit of juice so that next season, once Mike Conley is out and maybe Dillingham is moved into that starting job, that this Bones Highland or younger player that's has a little bit more of a longer time in the league than Brogdon would, then they could move up there. I like the like logistics and feel of that. If that's Bones, I don't know. I'm not like blown away by Bones Highland or something like that type of player or another young point guard X. I just don't think it creates the same potential issues that a Malcolm Brogdon signing would, given the expectations of his minutes to play. And the difference there, if Brogdon needs to sign for that tax MLE, it's like $5.5 million. You do that. Okay, now you are right up against the second apron and you have no flexibility to work with during this season. They have enough money to be able to give a player that, but you want that to be the right player because the opportunity cost is by getting that player, you really restrict any sort of in-season flexibility that you might have. And given the fact that there are some questions about Brogdon's health historically, you know, is that worth the risk? That said, I think Brogdon, you know, I haven't watched a ton of him over the past couple of years, but in theory, that would be a really nice player to have if you didn't have Rob Dillingham sitting there heavily invested in, ready for an opportunity here. So I'm not going to be upset if they sign Malcolm Brogdon. I'm just gonna be like, ooh, okay. Gonna have to do some navigation here at the point guard position now.
But you made a good point about this organization, I would imagine, is planning on 13 months from now going into training camp of 2026 with Rob Dillingham as the starting point guard. I would imagine that is the plan with the equity they put in to try to acquire him. So, like, I think about the Vikings right now. Like, is Ryan Tannehill a free agent better than Brett Ripien? Probably. But do you want to bring, like, they need to keep Mike Conley as the guy. He will go into training camp as the starter, kind of cater this thing to get Rob ready. But if you go get a Malcolm Brogdon and all of a sudden he slots now and he's backing up Mike and Mike misses those 22 games I talked about, like, you just don't want to mess up the pecking order of all this because, again, like, Rob to me is the most intriguing player on this team for next season. And also still big picture of, like, yes, it would be sexier to go get a more safety net, higher floor backup point guard because those exist. Like, there are better backup point guards to trust in a one-game sample size than Rob Dillingham right now. But I kind of not a gap here, but like, you got to just kind of take the bumps and bruises here a little bit and let the kid spread his wings a little bit. So that's why any free agent like that. But again, one thing that you brought up that I did not think, this team does between now and training camp need to sign one more player, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that'll, you know, that'll happen in some form or fashion. It's basically, are you bringing a guy in for a minimum to be a minimum contract end of the roster sort of guy? Or are you trying to get more aggressive with that 5.5 million, 5.7, whatever it is, tax mid-level exception and start and bring in a guy who's more like the Brogdon or the top of the bottom of the barrel of guys that remain out there. Do you see Rob starting at some point during the season, or do you think Conley will continue to start? That was the Luke R question.
I do believe Rob will spot start. I don't know if he'll ever take over the incumbent, but again, maybe this is more of a preference answer than like an analysis answer. Dante has that injury now. He's going to be kind of resting up. I think he'll be ready for training camp. No reporting pushes back on that. But I want to just see Dante DiVincenzo more in that Malik Beasley role of just an off-ball guard. I don't want him to have to play point. We haven't really mentioned this yet in 2 hours. Losing Nikhil, you lose some threes, you lose some defense. But he was asked a lot of times to spot start for Mike. Like, he was the backup point guard at times. And now without him, I think that's even more of a chance for Rob to start in those spots. So yeah, man, like, if there's a back-to-back on the schedule in November, I don't want Mike to play in it for now. Not because I don't trust Mike, but like, I think Mike needs to be juiced up a little bit more for the playoffs. And that should just be common sense the night that Rob starts next to Ant.
I think I disagree with you there. I would go DiVincenzo there. And I'm hearing what you're saying about the point guard thing and is Dante best. But I mean, we did have a good example of when Dante did start for those 6 or 7 games and Mike Conley started coming off of the bench. I think, again, due to continuity, a little bit better understanding of everything, I think you can make that work if you need to at the point guard position where you have 3 handlers out there starting in Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, and Dante DiVincenzo. I think that would be fine. That said, Rob has a really good first 30 games of the season in his little 14 minutes a night bench role. And we're like, okay, this Rob step forward has really happened. And then the Mike Conley injury happens. And now you're Chris Finch and you're Mike Honori, and you're sitting there being like, all right, do we start Dante or Rob? Are we confident in Rob now? Yes. Okay, then sure. Then you can do that. Keep Dante in his 6-man role. I don't think, in my opinion, that we're at the stage yet that if somebody else was going to start rather than Mike Conley at point guard, that it should be Rob Dillingham. I want to see a good look at the 14, 15 minutes a night role, earn that, and then we can talk about spot starting would be my stance there.
And that's fine. I think my Dante stuff, by the way, like I'm not just expecting every player on this roster to take a leap next year. Like I know we talked about a positive cocktail. Like for now, I don't see Naz Reid taking a huge leap because Julius is going to play a lot of minutes. And like Jaden stuff too. Like I love the Jaden stuff from January, February. I don't know if that ceiling will ever be reached when he's got this many other guys on the team that have to touch the ball and eat. So the Dante thing for me is like, I expect a bounce back season, maybe because of the continuity and if this toe doesn't linger, but I just don't know if he was put in the right role for him to thoroughly succeed. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but like, I don't know if when they traded for him.
Oh yeah. It wasn't
before training camp. It was like, oh, cool. There's our backup point guard.
Right. Yeah. No, Finch said as much. They were searching around for that. Is it Nikhil? Is it Dante? What is Rob going to be ready? Like they were throwing stuff at the wall, I think, at the backup point guard spot or just the point guard's position in general at the beginning of last season. I think they have a better idea of what they have in-house and now know that they don't have Nikhil in-house. So either way, like Rob's in the mix there. And Rob, if Mike Conley misses a game, Rob's playing for sure. And probably playing 20 plus minutes in that game. I don't think he needs to start. And yeah, we'll see.
My last nugget on Rob Dillingham is just, I was blown away by this when I was researching this morning. Mike Conley played 71 games last year. Like, that's a lot of basketball. He started, I think, in 64 of them, but like, I don't want Mike to go above that 60 game threshold, which I've said now 100 times. But if you were to take his minutes back and you take out Nikhil, who again played a lot of point guard for this team in spurts, you do have that might be the biggest size of possible minutes or role, right? And who's going to take that on? And if it doesn't work for Rob, then maybe we pivot to some more of the point Ant stuff. And now he's running along TJ, but I just think that's going to be fascinating. What they do at point guard or at a lead ball handler next to Ant next season will be one of the 2 most intriguing things of training camp as it starts in October. So do you want to close with just some ownership stuff?
One. Yeah.
2 good questions here. Just kind of just ownership, new ownership. That's all behind us now. Fan experience. This is from Eric Langsev. How will the fan experience at Target Center be different now that Mark, Laurie, and Alex Rodriguez have full control of ownership? And then Josh Stamper with new ownership talking rebrand. What would you like to see? New logo, new jerseys, etc. I'll throw it to you first.
Well, I mean, I think with the fan experience, the thing we know from the Laurie and Rodriguez press conference, and we talked about this in Vegas after that press conference when we did the pod, is there's going to be a lot of investment in the in-arena experience. I think I've been covering games at Target Center for 8 full seasons, and the in-arena experience has largely been the exact same the entire time. You kind of knew, and season ticket holders know this too, like you kind of get attuned to what the pattern of this happens at the game and this does. And I think it will start to feel differently. I think maybe in 2 or 3 years we'll be like, whoa, remember what it was like back in 2024 when, at Wolves home games, it looks differently in here now. I think we'll start to get a difference in the fan experience, potentially changes in the lighting and what it looks like in there. I know that's something they're working on. But I think it'll just start to feel like a new era. That's not real specifics to Eric's question there. Maybe you have more of those that you can touch on, but I just think it in time, maybe not immediately, it'll start to feel a little different.
I think if the lower bowl is dimmed, I'm going to take some credit for that because I've been planting that in people's brains at a high level for a while now. I also think one that came to mind about fan experience, and this was something you and I were kind of thrown into the deep end because for people that don't know, like after the press conference in Vegas, we got to talk to Mark and Alex for 30 minutes, just like a handful of us. And I met the guy from the Jump app in terms of ticketing. And I think they want to revolutionize. And I know we're going to start talking about a lot of NBA business terms here, but one of my biggest takeaways from Vegas was just kind of seeing Mark Lowry be really re-engaged or, had a lot of excitement about this is kind of his wheelhouse. Like I think Alex Rodriguez on that part of the ownership group is going to be a lot more player relations and, relating to the media. And I think, having strong relationships with even guys like Stephen A. Smith, as much as you and I want to roll our eyes, is big because that'll help keep some of the piranhas off. And I think Mark is going to go full in on player experience and trying to make this a more modern organization. Fan experience, yeah. And I think they're going to, I tell this to Alex sometimes, like, I think they're going to fuck something up. And I think this is a really good way to close our pods because when you look across the street, you're just seeing on a daily basis how having bad ownership fucking sucks. And that's why I'm so passionate about this. Like what the Twins like 2 years ago, 21 months ago, won a playoff series or whatever. And it was like, awesome. They're building something. And then they cut costs and it has completely nuked what I think is one of like the 5 best baseball situations in the country with the stadium and the fan base and all that stuff. So as long as Mark and Alex continue to invest in this thing, and they've done nothing so far that would make you think that they wouldn't, and now that they have the keys to the house, they need to continue to invest. And when you see them trade a pick for some cash considerations, I don't think that's being cheap. I think that's Tim Conley being like, hey, man, we got to be a little smarter. Tim's been out saying this, like, we got to be smarter with the second apron stuff because it hurts you. But all the other stuff, whether it be in better Wi-Fi or quicker concession stands or, yes, newer jerseys, rebrands, all that stuff, I think this new ownership group understands it way better than the old ownership group did. And I think it's time for fans. They've gotten a better basketball product, but I still think their ROI on season tickets and increasing everything is really lacking. And they need a better experience to buy their tickets, to sell their tickets if they can't go, to have merchandise that isn't super shitty from Fanatics. I think all of that stuff is going to be on the emphasis this right now. Like I think Mark Lowry's thinking about that stuff right now. And I hope it is easier for them because they deserve it.
And I think the care factors there, I think you're right to point out that it's something that they're passionate about. I mean, we've talked to them about that for years, about wanting things to change, because I talk about me being there for 8 years at all the home games. I mean, they've been at most of the home games for 4 years too.
Yeah.
And as owners, they've had their little notebooks of like, want this. Like you said, and like I said, I don't know exactly what that is, if it'll be perfect and how fast it will all come. But I do think it's fair to say that the fan experience will change. And from the conversation that you're referencing in Vegas, I got a lot of questions about, what are complaints that people have. I think there's going to be a lot more asking, fans what it is, the season ticket holders, and the things that they want, put in place. Because frankly, I'm going to go sit in my little same seat no matter what the whole time. This isn't. But I get, we both have a ton of friends here in the area that have season tickets or go to games, and frankly, I get a little bit annoyed when they like complain to me about, this sucks, this is a problem there. I'm like, I don't actually work for the Timberwolves. Point being, I think they have people who do work for the Timberwolves now, and will be hiring more people who work for the Timberwolves who are going to care about those things. So yeah, specifics, I bet you the lighting is darker, and they're going to have that jump app where you can move your seats in the stadium in the middle of games. And those are two little anecdotes of that probably signal other change coming as well.
And to kind of put a bow on it, but also like something that should be brought up is like broadcasting games, or how do fans watch games? Like you've always been really passionate about, you have this maybe once in a lifetime athlete player on your team. And how many of our friends in the state haven't been able to watch Anthony Edwards? Because if they're not going to a game, they're like, well, I can't find it on TV, or I have to log into 4 streaming services. That is and should be at the forefront of, I think that was one of the answers to Mark I gave, was like, how about we just start by letting everyone in the state watch number 5 play basketball? Mm-hmm. That seems like a good starting point. So yeah, I would imagine, and I think that's important too, that really rich people that you might never interact with, like, care about wanting to ask losers like me with a survey or something like, what can we do to make this better? And I think being honest with them on both sides of this, I think I've said this for years, going back to before even the team was for sale, and again, we're seeing it with the poll ads. You can't have a successful organization without good ownership and good leadership. And I think for the first time in my life, this team has good ownership and leadership. And I hope that trickles down to a variety of things, right? Like all the different ways that fans experience. Like, I think you should be able to open the Timberwolves app and do not only ticket stuff via Jump, but like watch the game, right? Or I don't know, like interact with other people in the community or see all the tweets. Like, I think the TV one is,
I think the TV one is interesting. And I would put put myself in the shoes of the mystery CEO that's going to be taking over the Wolves someday. I think that TV proposition in particular will be an interesting one, because if you just look at it on the surface and you say, okay, we're going to get rid of this really messy streaming service that we have through Bally Sports North right now and the lack of distribution it has, initially you'll go, okay, well, let's change that. But then if you change from Bally Sports North, or change your distribution to just being like on the airwaves like Dallas has, or just on local TV for free, Dallas, Utah, Phoenix, those teams have that. You are then taking a huge revenue loss initially, because you no longer have that same regional sports network distribution that goes out to your team, or revenue from broadcasting the games. And you don't take a zero, but you take a lot less in revenue there. I think that will be a great test for the CEO of, do I look at that 50 million in revenue down, or do I think about it in, now everybody gets to watch the team. And if everybody is watching the team, that leads to more connection to the team, which leads to more ticket sales, which leads to more merchandise, which leads to more of just sort of the global bucket of ways to spend money on the Timberwolves. I don't know enough about the economics of it to know how much that fills up that $50 million bucket that you lose there. But it's not a crazy idea, because there are other teams that are doing it and have already rationalized the revenue drop. And are believing in making up for it in other revenue ways. And I think that's what a new smart, sharp CEO would see is, okay, sacrificing a little bit of revenue now to be made up for down the line in future revenue, while also accruing a ton of goodwill with the fan base broadly. I'd love to see that.
I don't have the direct quote, but I remember when Mark told you and I, like, kind of treating it like a startup, or a startup mentality of like not worrying about the bottom line every year. And this kind of, I won't rant on it, but it kind of tied into what the WNBA is going on with their CBA. It's like, why would the players get more of the BRI when they're losing money? It's like, dude, the Wolves have been losing money every year, like from a net, expenses and revenue. Like good NBA teams should probably lose money on a year-to-year basis, because the valuations are moving way faster than, okay, like we stayed at the Ritz for all 41 home games last year and we lost $40 million. But in 4 years, the team went from a valuation of 1.6 to 3.4. Like, this is all about valuation. And I think Mark Lowry really, really, and Alex too, really, really get that. And if they have that mentality of, we're okay,
that's what they've done in their other businesses. That's
what they've done with this team.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right,
so far, and
yep.
again, now the house is theirs and the keys are theirs. And when you see them not invest in something, I think it's going to be important to point it out. But treating this like a startup was one of the smartest things I thought Mark told us. It's because like that's how you should do it. You should not be worried about, did we make $16 million last season? It's your team valuation went up $85 million because all these teams keep selling for outrageous amounts.
Treating it that way would be the best thing for the fan base, at least. So
yeah,
I'm cheering for that. Like of those sort of changes that make the fan experience at home, like we're talking about with TV, better, and the in-arena fan experience better. Good thing is, I think those are both really low bars right now. And with a little bit of work and intention on this new ownership group's part, I think those are very achievable bars to exceed. So
and
we'll
on the
see.
rebrand stuff, again, I just want to
Yeah.
like, that is not necessarily something that Alex Rodriguez and two designers get into a room about. Like there's a lot, even to the, as stupid as it is, and I brought this up a couple weeks ago, dimming the lights in the lower bowl at Target Center is not a light switch. You have to loop in the city, and the CEO of the team right now is meeting with the mayor. Like there's a lot of logistics that go into that stuff. So, well, I too love the history of this organization or the team and some of the older logos and stuff. I don't think the brand is great. I don't think it's terrible. I do think they need to rebrand at some point. I think Nike plays a huge role in that, and these creative agencies. So I think that's going to take a little longer to do. And no, they're not going to have new jerseys in October because it is a, my friend Bobby, like he works in women's fashion. They're doing 2027 summer apparel right now. Like that stuff takes a long time to integrate and change. And I expect it to come, but I don't expect it to be, honestly, like you said, at the forefront of get new jerseys as the team continues to get better. Like let's focus on making every game right now accessible to everyone in the state or the tri-state area, and making sure that it's an easy experience to get to, park, safe, all that stuff.
I think that's a good place to close it. You got anything else?
Yeah, this is probably the last pod you and I are going to do, maybe unless something breaks. I know I think the plan for August is to maybe sprinkle in some stuff, right? Rather than just completely take it off.
Yeah.
But we always talk about support those who support us. And I think one of our friends who supports us a lot. If you're not a football fan and you hate my analogies and you're like, what am I going to do for basketball in the month of August? I'm biased, but our friend Craig Kilborn did an awesome 30 for 30. It's like a 6-part audio podcast, 30 for 30 thing. So it's not on TV. And it's kind of up your alley. It's about Martin Manley, who basically was like kind of brought math into the NBA, kind of like who was the baseball guy?
Bill James.
Yeah, Bill James did it for baseball. Like Martin Manley is kind of the Bill James of the NBA. And our friend Craig Kilborn basically acted as Martin Manley in this 6-part podcast series. The first couple episodes are kind of slow, and then Craig comes in, Craig Kilborn, formerly of SportsCenter and The Daily Show. But it's a really fun listen. Like if you're driving to the lake this month or hanging out with your family, like throw these 6 episodes on. So that's a fun little nerdy basketball corner for people. But I wanted to shout that out because Craig supports us, and Craig does a really good job on it. So go listen to I can't remember what it's called. It's a 30 for, I think it's called Chasing Basketball Heaven, Apple, Spotify. While you're going to subscribe to this pod, go listen to those.
Yeah, I absolutely. Craig told us a little bit about that when we were in LA for the playoffs, and he was really excited about it. I haven't listened to it yet, but much like the Ant book, I have it on my August
and similar
August
to Severance,
to-do list.
Just stick through it, right? The first couple episodes are slow. Everyone knows it. Craig will tell you that too. But then 3, 4, especially 4, 5, and 6, they get really interesting. And it's a cool topic about how the NBA has modernized. And that's something that you and I talk about on a daily basis.
Yeah. And there won't be many of these podcasts in August either. Like Kyle said, we'll kind of mix them in as it comes. As we mentioned today, they're going to sign another player at some point. If that happens, maybe not immediately, but we will get a pod on that, or just really any sort of breaking news sort of stuff. So rather than our typical structure of 4 episodes per week, it's just going to kind of be, we'll do podcasts when they come. But I'm really glad we did this sort of 2-part mailbag episode to touch on, just to kind of, I think we touched on just about everything, and use that as a point in time right now, end of July, beginning of August. And before we know it, we'll be firing it back up. It'll be training camp, and we'll be doing a bunch of pods, but focus on your fantasy football team. Until then, Kyle.
Yeah, again, it's kind of the full lull now before we really pick things up. But I mean, I've never been more excited to cover a team for next season, and I think you and I are going to be doing a bunch of pods. So
Mhm.
it's a little break. There's a lot of other stuff going on. Go enjoy your summer. I know there's a lot of smoke in the air in Minnesota right now, so hopefully you guys get to see the sun. But yeah, you never want to living in the state, living in the Midwest your whole life. You just always wait for summer. Don't take a day for granted. Get outside, go enjoy yourself, listen to some pods, read the Ant Book. And we'll be back soon to cover what I say it every year, but like, this can be such a fascinating season because you and I already, before we even get started, kind of differ on their contention status. And the NBA is in a weird spot right now with guys being injured. And I think that opens up more possibilities for teams to strike and get a bigger bite of that Tim Conley apple. So we'll see you soon.
We will. Again, we'll probably have another episode. This is coming out on Monday, August 4th. Maybe we'll get one the following week or something like that. But we always want the episodes to have some substance to them. And this time of year, there isn't a lot. But when that time does come, I will be back, and I'll probably bring Kyle and or other guests around with me. So until then, he's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah, yeah.